Hello everyone, I'm UniFC and this is Blue Lines TV, and today I'm bringing back another Predict That 11 for our Champions League game against AS Roma. Now before I get into the predicted lineup, of course we've got some injuries at the moment. Kante is going to be out. He's not going to be back until the Manchester United game November 5th. Of course, no one said that, but it's pretty obvious. Moses is going to be out for another 4 weeks. Unfortunately, he picked up another hamstring injury. And really, you guys, I don't know what it is about hamstrings recently. Is it the training by Conte? Is it something to do with these players going off and returning back from international duty? Who knows? Danny Drinkwater isn't available just yet. Expect to see him probably at the end of this month or the beginning of November. And they're basically the main injuries that we have at this moment in time. But good news, it looks like that main man, Alvaro Morata, will be coming back against Roma. Now, kicking off with the predicted 11. Now, starting with the goalkeeper, and of course, Courtois will be in goal. Courtois recently came out in a press conference criticising our performance against Crystal Palace. He was basically talking about us lacking intensity and saying that we allowed Palace to really have the advantage in this game, and it was very poor. And it's good that, you know, we've got players in the squad that like to take responsibility for their actions, and Courtois is of that nature. He's a born winner and he wants to do his best for the club. Now, moving on to the back three, and this is a position where I see Conte making some changes due to Moses being out injured. Now, starting with the right side of the defence, and I do see Antonio Rudiger playing on the right hand side. I think that Rudiger is really anticipating this match against Roma because of course we did sign him this summer from them, and I think that Rudiger is going to play on the right hand side because I feel that Conte is going to be under pressure because we have lost 2 games on the bounce. We're playing against Roma. If we beat Roma convincingly, have a good game against them, that's going to help us with our league form, and I feel that Rudiger will be playing on the right hand side of the defence as we saw against the Man City game, so I'm expecting a very similar back line. Of course, Rudiger is very adept at coming out, pushing into midfield and playing passes to Morata and to the midfield players around him and to members of the front three. He's got a very good passing technique, and in a way he is like a German David Luiz. He is very eccentric, he likes to express himself on the pitch, and like I said, he's going to be anticipating this match tomorrow. Now, moving on to the middle of the back three, and David Luiz will regain his place there. Of course, Luiz's performance against Crystal Palace wasn't his best. The last game he played was against Atletico Madrid, so maybe he does have a bit of an excuse maybe for being a bit off form in that Crystal Palace game because he hasn't really been able to play as much. But I'm expecting Luiz to put pressure on himself and really try and, you know, regain his form. Of course, he's made some uncharacteristic mistakes. I'm going to say uncharacteristic because for the past few years, I haven't really seen too many mistakes in his play. But of course, with a silly red card and then giving away a penalty. So I think Luiz really just needs to, you know, pick himself up and really start playing. Now, moving on to the left-hand side of the back three, and it looks like Gary Cahill is going to regain his place there. Of course, it looks like this captaincy that he's been given this season is really giving him a really assertive claim for a first-team spot week in and week out. And I think with Cahill, we're starting to see now, especially as we've seen the likes of Rudiger playing in that left-hand side and Christensen playing, that he might not possibly be the ideal person you'd want in a back three because we're seeing with the likes of Rudiger and Christensen ball playing ability and calmness under pressure. And I think with Cahill, you're really starting to notice some of his flaws compared to some of the guys that have been playing in his absence. And I'm thinking with Cahill, honestly, I think it might be a matter of time before he might lose his place in the first team. Of course, with Conte, when he's under pressure, Conte likes to make changes, assertive, bold changes to really start things running again. And maybe Cahill potentially could be a casualty of that. Now, moving on to the 2 wing backs, and I feel that Aspie will be playing on the right hand side of the wing back position. And I think with Aspie playing there, of course, that's going to allow Rudiger to become part of that back three. I think with Azpilicueta, him defending in a more comfortable position could actually be good for his form because, as I have said throughout all of my match reviews, not that Azpilicueta has been awful, because he hasn't been. We've seen improvements in his game in terms of his distribution out back with the ball, but he hasn't been looking as authoritative as he was last season. How many times are we noticing wingers pushing into the box when last season they couldn't get anywhere near it because Aspie was closing that position down and winning the tackle pretty early. Now, if any player is allowed to be off form a bit, Azpilicueta is definitely allowed to do that because he has been a great servant for the past few years now, and he's been very, very consistent. So I hope that Aspie does regain his place. I think playing on that right hand side will help him regain some of his confidence, as he's going to feel more comfortable defending on the right hand side. And of course on the left hand side is going to be Marcos Alonso. Now Marcos Alonso, as I said, started the season off very well because of the goals he scored. You know, we're all talking about that Spurs game he had where he scored the brace against them, but even though people are starting to think Alonso is one of the best wing backs in the world, he isn't. He still is a good player. He's good enough to play for Chelsea and become part of the squad, but he does have some frailties in his play. And of course, his main weaknesses are he's slow, which of course isn't his fault. Nothing he can do about that. But it doesn't help, especially in this league, because especially when he's on the turn and running back, he never catches up with a winger, and also his tackling is pretty suspect because he doesn't win the ball back quick enough, and because he's taking too much time winning balls back from wingers, that's allowing opposition teams to push up and start moves. And as we've seen, of course, we're seeing Cahill and Alonso playing together, but noticing teams exploiting some of that space behind them. And of course, I'm hoping that something's going to change in the future because it's going to have to. Now, moving on to the midfield too, and that is going to be Bakayoko and Cesc Fabregas. Now, starting off with Bakayoko, as I have been telling you guys, especially throughout summer, it is going to take Bakayoko a lot of time to get used and comfortable playing for Chelsea, and that's because when he was at Monaco, they played a completely different style to how we play with the ball at Chelsea. For example, Bakayoko had many more easy passing options. Think about it like this: how many times were Mendy or Sidibe bombing forwards, creating space? Plus he's got two strikers up front with Silva and Lamar tucking in midfield. Of course, it's very easy for players of Bakayoko's ability to make those passes, but playing for Chelsea is very different because a lot of teams will park the bus and he has to touch the ball way more often. At Monaco, he wasn't dictating the play. It wasn't his game to dictate the play or contribute to a lot with his passing, but at Chelsea it's completely different. And I'm thinking with Bakayoko, as I've said, he hasn't had a pre-season, he was injured throughout, he's coming to a new team, new style, new tactics. It's going to take him some time. Moving on to Cesc Fabregas, and I must say Cesc was our best player against Crystal Palace, but of course we messed things up completely in the second half because instead of trying to dictate the play, keep possession of the ball, we kept forcing everything to the wing backs to spam crosses into the box. And I'm thinking, when you have Fabregas, Hazard, Masunda and Pedro playing and you're not giving them the ball, then you're doing something wrong. But I think that Fabregas gets scapegoated too often, and I keep making this point all the time. When we play the system we do in a 3-4-3, it's imperative the front three keep hold of the ball, because when they do, the wing backs can get forwards, and that's when the midfield can get on the ball, and that's when the back three can push up. But when someone in the front three loses control of the ball or gives away possession, that means the wing backs, who are already making their moves to support them, are in no man's land, and that means our midfield too gets stretched. And I'm thinking a lot of people think Fabregas can't play in big games. He can, but maybe we might have to change our approach to how we play in these big games. Moving on to the front three, and I see Hazard, Morata and Pedro playing up front. Now, starting with Eden Hazard. Eden Hazard was pretty quiet against Crystal Palace. I felt that a lot of people's reactions to him were pretty premature, and they didn't really understand why his performance was so quiet. And you have to realise Hazard was isolated quite a lot of the times. We weren't really using the ball well enough, especially in the second half. And then on top of that, the striker Michy Batshuayi, who wasn't able to keep the ball or link up play, means that Hazard didn't have any passing options. Because as you've seen with him playing with Morata, how often do they link up and play 1-2s? Look at last season, constantly Costa and Hazard would link up, play 1-2s with each other and try and play each other in. Hazard couldn't do that against Crystal Palace and wasn't able to get many touches of the ball. And whenever he had to get the ball, he had to keep dropping deeper to receive it, so it didn't help his cause. Now, moving on to the right hand side of the front three, and I see Pedro playing in this game today. And I feel with Pedro, he's the most well-suited player to that right-hand side of the front three purely because of his off-the-ball movement and his intelligence, because he's able to break the lines effectively. He creates space for the likes of the striker and Hazard to really create something and get shots on goal, and that's why it's imperative. Of course, the issues with Pedro is he gives the ball away too easily, he gets brushed off quite a lot, but at the same time, his finishing is good. He's got a left foot and a right foot, and it's his movement that really helps the fluidity of that front three. And I feel that with Aspie potentially playing as a wing back in this game tomorrow, Pedro's movement is going to be very important. And to end things off with, that main man up front is back, Alvaro Morata, who probably has been our best player so far this season. Morata, we've been missing so many of his great qualities, his runs and behind, his ability to drop deep and link up the play, his first touch, his skill, his running from deep positions, and his heading ability and his physical aerial prowess. Out of all the injured players, we've missed Morata the most because he makes sense of that front three. He gives an outlet to the wide defender on the right to have a passing and crossing option. He links up with Hazard in the front three, and he keeps hold of the ball and allows us to get on the ball. And I feel that we've missed him so much. I'm happy to see him tomorrow, and I expect him to cause the Roma defence a lot of problems, especially because it looks like Manolas is going to be out injured and they've lost Rudiger, so Roma's back three isn't as strong as it was last season. And that's going to end today's Predict That 11 video for Chelsea's game against Roma tomorrow. Now you guys, before I end the video, I hope you guys enjoyed it, but please, to help support me and this channel, I'd love for all of you to go to the notification on the right. Please click on that bell, because I've noticed that a lot of people aren't getting notifications towards the videos that are coming out. Literally only 10% of people are actually getting the notifications, which is quite a lot. So if you haven't been notified to this channel, please, it's very simple. Press the bell notification icon, which is beside the subscription tab, to be notified to all things Blue Lions TV. Thanks for watching today's video. I'll see you guys soon.